Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you the process for how I made this model here, as well as an overview of the full pipeline that I basically used to make character portraits. Let's get into it. To begin with, step 1 is always to sculpt or model the body. I prefer to sculpt, and so this is what I always start out with. There's a lot of different ways to sculpt the body, and in a couple other previous videos I talked about some of the simple building blocks I use, so be sure to check those out. In any case, you'll find this process quite relaxing after you practice it a few times. When done sculpting the body, you'll also have to retopologize it. This is basically the process of modeling over our sculpt so that the geometry becomes less dense. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but make sure the topology is relatively decent, and be sure to use topology references. You'll want to keep your faces relatively evenly spaced in most parts of the body, but more dense in areas like the eyes or anywhere that just requires more detail. Moving forward, I rig my character using the free Rigify add-on in Blender. What Rigify lets you do basically is just place bones in your character and then automatically generate a rig. If you want to learn more about Rigify, just check out CG Dive on YouTube. He has some really good videos there. I then UV unwrap the body so that we can begin texture painting on it. After unwrapping, I begin the skin texturing process. So I always begin with drawing in blacks, and then from there I draw in the reds in the face, and so on and so forth. If you look at my nodes, you can clearly see it's just the process of layering more and more texture painting on top of each other. Once done with that, I duplicate away a scalped object from the top of the head and make it a hair color. This is just to set the stage for adding hair strands. Now, to add those hair strands, I use path curves and basically just continuously place them around the head. Make sure you're rotating around your model a lot so that you can make sure the curves look good from all angles. After that, I pose my character into place. If you're wondering about the hair, you can just select all of them and parent them to the head bone on the Rigify rig. Once done posing, I then add the clothing for my models. As you can see here, I'm modeling the top over the rest of the body, and to add this type of clothing, I recommend just duplicating faces from your model and then separating them with the P key. And then after they're separated to their own object, you can move and extrude and do all of those operations. Some modifiers I always like to add are the solidify modifier and the subdivision surface modifier, which helps to give your clothing a much nicer look. I also wanted to add a dress for her, so as you can see here, I'm doing the same thing we did before with duplicating vertices and then pretty much just extruding down and adding loop cuts, doing all that, and just making whatever edits I need to get it into the shape that I want. Over here, I tried adding a gradient from top to bottom on the clothing, but ultimately in the end, I ended up removing it. After being done with the basic blockout of all my clothing and everything else, I move on to adding background elements. Now, you can model whatever you want here. For me, I just added branches to the background and even modeled flowers to add to the background as well. Pretty much my process was just duplicating these flowers and branches around everywhere, as you can see in the final version. I also had this green background object here, and the reason I had it was because I just kind of wanted our character to cast a shadow on something in the background, because I thought that would make it look a bit better. For the clothing, I added toon shading to them and also drew in some of the folds here. To do this, basically in my node setup, I just multiplied the base color of the clothing with the toon shader itself, and also made some image textures that allowed me to draw folds on it. So now I can slide how dark I want the folds and the toon shading to be. One other thing I forgot to mention is that I added these black curves basically on anywhere in the clothing where I wanted to add a sort of line, just using a path curve with a black material. From there, it was basically done and it was time to composite. To composite, I used Vegas Pro and I used the warm vignette filter, which lets you slide a bunch of different compositing filters, and then after that I was able to render it out. So I hope you guys found this walkthrough interesting. As usual, more videos are coming. Also, for those of you who are more serious about learning and really want to become good at this style, I recommend checking out ukiyo-girls.io if you want in-depth step-by-step tutorials. I'll show you the exact process for making this anime portrait from scratch, as well as a rigged full body character including texturing the body and just everything else. I'll also show you the full process for making this koi pond model in animation, as well as the sunflower one. You'll learn about sculpting the body, texturing, and making effective shaders that give off that wow factor even if you have no prior experience. You'll also learn about my layered method, which is basically the process I've developed over years of trial and error to basically guarantee that my works look good through observation, as observation is a skill constantly overlooked, but yet it's so critically important in making good looking models. Not only that, but you'll be given access to our Discord community where you can ask me whatever you want about art, and you'll also be given access to both of my add-ons that I've developed and are normally paid. So if you want a place where you can learn at your own pace and save yourself from making unnecessary mistakes, check out ukiyo-girls.io.